Social Security is a concept enshrined in Article 22 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which states, "Everyone, as a member of society, has the right to social security and is entitled to realization through national effort and international cooperation and in accordance with the organization and resources of each state, of the economic, social and cultural rights indispensable for his dignity and the free development of his personality." In simple terms, the signatories agree that society in which a person lives should help them to develop and to make the most of all the advantages which are offered to them in the country. Social Security may also refer to the action programs of government intended to promote the welfare of the population through assistance measures, guaranteeing access to sufficient resources for food and shelter and to promote health and well-being for the population at large and potentially vulnerable segments such as children, the elderly, the sick and the unemployed. Services providing Social Security are often called social services. Terminology in this area in the United States is somewhat different from in the rest of the English-speaking world. The general term for an action program in support of the well-being of the population in the United States is welfare program, and the general term for all such programs is simply welfare. In American society, the term welfare arguably has negative connotations. The term Social Security, in the United States, refers to a specific social insurance program for the retired and the disabled. Elsewhere the term is used in a much broader sense, referring to the economic security society offers when people are faced with certain risks. In its 1952 Social Security Convention, the International Labour Organization defined the traditional contingencies covered by Social Security as including survival beyond a prescribed age, to be covered by old age pensions, the loss of support suffered by a widow or child as the result of the death of the breadwinner, responsibility for the maintenance of children, the treatment of any morbid condition, whatever its cause, a suspension of earnings due to pregnancy and confinement and the consequences, a suspension of earnings due to an inability to obtain suitable employment for protected persons who are capable of, and available for, work, a suspension of earnings due to an incapacity for work resulting from a morbid condition, a permanent or persistent inability to engage in any gainful activity, the costs and losses involved in medical care, sickness leave, invalidity and death of the breadwinner due to an occupational accident or disease. People who cannot reach a guaranteed social minimum for other reasons may be eligible for social assistance. Modern authors often consider the ILO approach too narrow. In their view, Social Security is not limited to the provision of cash transfers, but also aims at security of work, health, and social participation, and new social risks should be included in the list as well. Social Security may refer to social insurance, where people receive benefits or services in recognition of contributions to an insurance program. These services typically include provision for retirement pensions, disability insurance, survivor benefits and unemployment insurance. Services provided by government or designated agencies responsible for Social Security provision. In different countries, that may include medical care, financial support during unemployment, sickness, or retirement, health and safety at work, aspects of social work and even industrial relations. Basic security irrespective of participation in specific insurance programs where eligibility may otherwise be an issue. For instance, assistance given to newly arrived refugees for basic necessities such as food, clothing, housing, education, money, and medical care. A report published by the ILO in 2014 estimated that only 27% of the world's population has access to comprehensive social security. History. While several of the provisions to which the concept refers have a long history, the notion of Social Security itself is a fairly recent one. The earliest examples of use date from the 19th century. In a speech to mark the independence of Venezuela, Simón Bolívar pronounced, "El sistema de gobierno más perfecto es aquel que produce más suma de felicidad posible, más suma de seguridad social y más suma de estabilidad política." In the Roman Empire, social welfare to help the poor was enlarged by the Emperor Trajan. Trajan's program brought acclaim from many, including Pliny the Younger. In Jewish tradition, charity is a matter of religious obligation rather than benevolence. Contemporary charity is regarded as a continuation of the biblical Masarani, or poor tithe, as well as biblical practices, such as permitting the poor to glean the corners of a field and harvest during the Shemitah. Voluntary charity, along with prayer and repentance, is befriended to ameliorate the consequences of bad acts. The Song dynasty government supported multiple forms of social assistance programs, including the establishment of retirement homes, public clinics, and paupers' graveyards. According to Robert Henry Nelson, the medieval Roman Catholic Church operated a far-reaching and comprehensive welfare system for the poor. The concepts of welfare and pension were put into practice in the early Islamic law of the Caliphate as forms of zakat, one of the 5 pillars of Islam, since the time of the Rashidun Caliph Umar in the 7th century. The taxes collected in the treasury of an Islamic government were used to provide income for the needy, including the poor, elderly, orphans, widows, and the disabled. According to the Islamic jurist Al-Ghazali, the government was also expected to store up food supplies in every region in case a disaster or famine occurred. There is relatively little statistical data on transfer payments before the High Middle Ages. In the medieval period and until the Industrial Revolution, the function of welfare payments in Europe was principally achieved through private giving or charity. In those early times, there was a much broader group considered to be in poverty as compared to the 21st century. Early welfare programs in Europe included the English Poor Law of 1601, which gave parishes the responsibility for providing poverty relief assistance to the poor. This system was substantially modified by the 19th century Poor Law Amendment Act, which introduced the system of workhouses. It was predominantly in the late 19th and early 20th centuries that an organized system of state welfare provision was introduced in many countries. Otto von Bismarck, Chancellor of Germany, introduced one of the first welfare systems for the working classes in 1883. In Great Britain, the Liberal government of Henry Campbell Bannerman and David Lloyd George introduced the National Insurance System in 1911, a system later expanded by Clement Attlee. The United States did not have an organized welfare system until the Great Depression, when emergency relief measures were introduced under President Franklin D. Roosevelt. Even then, Roosevelt's New Deal focused predominantly on a program of providing work and stimulating the economy through public spending on projects, rather than on cash payment. Income maintenance. This policy is usually applied through various programs designed to provide a population with income at times when they are unable to care for themselves. Income maintenance is based in a combination of 5 main types of program. Social insurance, considered above, means-tested benefits, financial assistance provided for those who are unable to cover basic needs, such as food, clothing and housing, due to poverty or lack of income because of unemployment, sickness, disability, or caring for children, while assistance is often in the form of financial payments. Those eligible for social welfare can usually access health and educational services free of charge. The amount of support is enough to cover basic needs, and eligibility is often subject to a comprehensive and complex assessment of an applicant's social and financial situation. See also income support, non-contributory benefits. Several countries have special schemes, administered with no requirement for contributions and no means test, for people in certain categories of need. For example, veterans of armed forces, people with disabilities and very old people. Discretionary benefits. Some schemes are based on the discretion of an official, such as a social worker. Universal or categorical benefits, also known as demigrants. These are non-contributory benefits given for whole sections of the population without a means test, such as family allowances or the public pension in New Zealand. See also, Alaska Permanent Fund Dividend. Social protection. Social protection refers to a set of benefits available from the state, market, civil society and households, or through a combination of these agencies, to the individual, households to reduce multidimensional deprivation. This multidimensional deprivation could be affecting less active poor persons and active poor persons. This broad framework makes this concept more acceptable in developing countries than the concept of social security. Social security is more applicable in the conditions where large numbers of citizens depend on the formal economy for their livelihood. Through a defined contribution, this social security may be managed. But, in the context of widespread informal economy, formal social security arrangements are almost absent for the vast majority of the working population. Besides, in developing countries, the state's capacity to reach the vast majority of the poor people may be limited because of its limited infrastructure and resources. In such a context, multiple agencies that could provide for social protection, including health care, is critical for policy consideration. The framework of social protection is thus holds the state responsible for providing for the poorest populations by regulating non-state agencies. Collaborative research from the Institute of Development Studies debating social protection from a global perspective suggests that advocates for social protection fall into two broad categories: instrumentalists and activists. Instrumentalists argue that extreme poverty, inequality, and vulnerability is dysfunctional in the achievement of development targets. In this view, social protection is about putting in place risk management mechanisms that will compensate for incomplete or missing insurance markets, until a time that private insurance can play a more prominent role in that society. Activist arguments view the persistence of extreme poverty, inequality, and vulnerability as symptoms of social injustice and structural inequality and see social protection as a right of citizenship. Targeted welfare is a necessary step between humanitarianism and the ideal of a guaranteed minimum income, where entitlement extends beyond cash or food transfers and is based on citizenship, not philanthropy. Proposed Social Security reforms. Raising the retirement age, the age when a person becomes eligible to receive full Social Security retirement benefits, has been increasing from age 65 on a schedule set by Congress in 1983. It has reached 66 and will gradually rise to 67 for those born in 1960 and later. Raising the full retirement age further is one option to help close Social Security's funding gap. Longevity index. If, as projected, Americans continue to live longer from one generation to the next, individuals will, on average, receive Social Security benefits for a longer period of time. The trend contributes to Social Security's funding gap, and one option to offset it is longevity indexing. Indexing would automatically modify Social Security to pay smaller monthly benefits as lifespans increase. Social Security cap. The Social Security payroll tax currently applies to annual earnings up to $117,500. Any wages earned above $117,500 go untaxed for Social Security. This cap generally increases every year as the national average wage increases. Today, the cap covers about 84% of total earnings in the nation. Raising the cap to cover a higher percent of total earnings would help close Social Security's funding gap. National and regional systems. Australia. Social Security in Australia. Canada. Social programs in Canada. Finland. Welfare in Finland. France. Social Security in France. Germany. Welfare in Germany. Greece. Social Insurance Institute. Indonesia, National Social Security System. Iran, Social Security Organization. Mexico, Mexican Social Security Institute. Netherlands, Social Security in the Netherlands. New Zealand, Welfare in New Zealand. Philippines, Social Security System. Singapore, Central Provident Fund. South Africa, South African Social Security Agency. Spain, Social Security in Spain. Sub-Saharan Africa, social programs in Sub-Saharan Africa. Sweden, Social Security in Sweden. Switzerland, Social Security in Switzerland. Turkey, Social Security in Turkey. United Kingdom, National Insurance. United States, Social Security.